Nancy and
can you hear us now, Nicola?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
thanks, Patrick. Or, not Patrick, Jackson, too. Hang on, I'm just.
Yeah. Okay.
Just trying to keep up on my
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We had a little time away up in Michigan.
In the UP or in the
No,
upper part of the
like the northwest corner of the Lower Peninsula.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that's nice.
Yeah, near Sleeping Bear. Very
You
safe.
sure see if you need to. Yeah.
Yeah, I've sent text to both of them. I'm not sure what's going on here. All right, Jackson, you ready to go? Ready? Okay. I would like to call to order the Monday, July 17th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder DePula,
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
I don't see Alder Moore, Alder Wood.
Here.
I don't see Alder Rademacher, Alder Bernstein,
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I would just like to start the meeting by welcoming our new city administrator, Neil Stick-Schulte. Happy to have you here finally.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's good to be here.
Good. Looking forward to working with you. Next item would be approval of minutes from the June 5th and June 19th meetings. Is there a motion to approve them?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. We have several appearances tonight. The first one that I think might be coming over Zoom is Evan Evachenko. You see him up there, Doug?
I don't. Nope. There he is.
There he is.
Yep.
Okay, Evan, you're up. If you'd like to give us your comments.
Hi, my name is Evan. I'm 12 years old and I'm trans. I would like to address the consideration of a resolution project to protect transgender and non-binary individuals. According to ACLUOhio.org, before Europeans colonized the globe, thousands of indigenous peoples acknowledged and celebrated multiple gender identities as part of their culture. Transgender history has existed for as long as humans have existed. Unfortunately, transgender people have been pushed into the shadows and our histories have been silenced. Despite our history, transgender people are constantly in fear for their safety and well-being. Many anti-trans laws are being passed across the country to take away our rights to gender-affirming healthcare and casting transgender people and their families as villains. We are under attack when all we want to do is go to school or the park without fear for our safety and receive necessary health care just like everyone else. This past year, I've cut off my relationship that I once had with my biological father and half-siblings because I was not accepted as my true self. He does not agree with gender-affirming health care, even though I needed to treat my gender dysphoria. I'm lucky to have such a supportive mom and stepdad that accept me for who I am when there are so many trans youths that don't have a support system. We still have ways to go, but this is a start. This resolution makes a statement that Monona will stand with the LGBTQIA+ community and makes them feel safe and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evan. We appreciate hearing from you. Okay, moving on. Next up would be Ruth Ann Whitehorse, who would like to speak about the Whitehorse property, and I think come up to the table here with the mic. I'm assuming those are working. Are these? Hi.
Last time I saw you was November 2022. Can you hear me? I don't know what.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Ruth Ann Whitehorse. I'm here to represent my 97-year-old father, Walter Whitehorse, and also my brother Jim and his wife. My father is a World War II vet, Native American from the Ho-Chunk tribe. He started his own business, Chief Auto Parts, in 1947 and has always paid his property taxes diligently. As Monona taxpayers, who on the council speaks for us? Last November 2022, I spoke before this council regarding the property at 1208 East Broadway, also known as Chief Auto Parts. Property that was owned by my father, which is separate entity from the other properties owned by my two brothers, Dennis, who is not here tonight, and Jim Whitehorse. During that meeting, the council approved the GDP for all the properties, and I want to thank you for that decision. Since May 2021, that's 2 years ago, North Point Development put an offer on Walter's property along with a portion of Dennis and Jim's. We still have not closed. Early in 2023, we started on the process of submitting the term sheet. It took 6 weeks for the term sheet to be submitted to our attorney by the city's attorney, Bill Cole. There are at least 12 emails from April 20th to May 16th that our attorney sent to Bill Cole requesting a draft of the 2-page term sheet. We finally received it, and it was signed off by CDA Chair on June 21st. In the meantime, with all those emails and stuff, we are charged for that from our attorney. Now that the term sheet is complete, our attorney has asked Bill Cole for the development agreement with emails ranging from June 12th through July 14th, 1 month later. We still have not received a draft. I guess once the agreement is written and signed, it will need the council's approval. That puts in another month down the road. We need approval from the city council for the term sheet and development agreement in order to set a closing date with North Point. I am very frustrated. I know my brothers are very frustrated at the timing of all of this. We have done our part in turning around required documents, emails, and signatures in a timely manner. It costs us time and money, along with the stress that goes along with it, for each month's delay. The city is also losing out on large incremental tax dollars. I'm asking the city council to lean on whomever it is to push this forward promptly. As I said in November 2022, it just needs to get done. I don't want to see a repeat of 2014, stalling out long enough that our potential buyer pulled out. And some of you, I don't know, if there's new members here, we had a buyer in 2014, and things just kept stalling. They kept making him go back to the drawing board, back and forth, and he finally had to pull out. He was losing his WIDA money, and he probably couldn't invest any more money. So my brother Jim and his wife Mary Lee came up from North Carolina on June 9th and has been staying with me and is still here. He was hopeful to close in June. On a side note, I'd like to send him back home. So it is late. Coincidentally, and at the November 2022 meeting, the Rutabaga location was granted to move on with the project, same as us. The building now is raised, and it appears that the project is in full swing. I have no idea what's going there or anything. And we are still stuck in the mud. Again, who on the council speaks for us? As a postscript, my father said to me a week ago, quote, "I'm not going to be around much longer. I'd sure like to see some benefit from this." Unquote. Thank you for letting me speak.
I can just respond to your question just a little bit about what's happening. The attorney did send the development agreement for there are 2 development agreements involved
Right,
with this
one for
project.
North Point and
The
one for
North Point
us.
attorney has had theirs for a while, and that needs to be settled too before this
Okay.
whole project can go forward. Bill Cole did send me and the CDA chair and our planner, who's not here tonight, his draft agreement late last week, and got comments about it from the CDA chair this morning that I just saw. So I'm assuming you will have that within the next day or 2, but I will check with Bill Cole tomorrow. I know it's 99% done. He was just waiting for comments. So.
I just have a hard time accepting the fact that it takes so dang long.
Unfortunately.
And I worked for the state for
Yeah.
35 years. I know the bureaucracy and
Yeah.
stuff. I definitely do. So,
I
but it
know.
just keeps pushing us back. And then we have the road that we have to put in by a certain deadline. Well, if we can't close and that road can't get started, what do we do?
Right.
So,
Right,
anyways.
no, I get it. It's
Yeah,
frustrating.
okay.
We have a lot of,
Okay.
these redevelopment projects
Okay.
take a long time.
Now, our broker is here, Blake,
Mm-hmm.
you know Blake, and I'd like him to speak about the potential buyers and the effect that this all has, if that's
I
okay.
guess, Blake, would you like to fill out a form back there? One thing I would say about the Rutabaga project, that does not involve any TIF money, so those are much simpler to
To push through.
push through, yeah. We've been working with them for about a year, I think, so.
Can he go ahead and speak right after me? Blake?
Yeah, I guess since the other 3 are on
Okay.
this different topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Doug and Mary, for responding to my email.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. Just bring it up here.
Is it your first day?
Step is Blake George, who would like to speak on the Whitehorse project.
Yeah, I think we have potential buyers, and one of the hardest things, and I get, we're trying to give these people assurances that it's going to happen, and I've said this probably 10 times at the CDA meeting. You know, it is a chicken and egg thing with people promising that this road's going to be in, that there's assurances that it'll get in. And so we've kind of given updates, and then we have to go quiet, and then they call us. They're like, hey, you know, a couple months ago in November, you got your GDP approved, and then you got through the CDA, and where are you at? And so I guess that's my point, is that obviously time and uncertainty for us do not create assurance. And, you know, the people that are involved, and I've said this before, I said it recently, that if we probably should have come in 8 years ago and asked for some TIF money when the road was half price and asked to put it in, and we probably wouldn't even be here today. But we are trying to give assurances to people. We do have a developer who's going to put in a kind of a high-end motorcycle, almost like a Harley Davidson level, on that site facing the Beltline. And then we have a variety of people for the last 2 sites. One is a bank, multiple banks, and so there is probably about $15 million that we see in tax base, an increment. You know, at a very simple mill rate of just using $20, you're looking at about $300,000 a year, or really every 4 weeks we delay this, you're talking $25,000 a month. Just if we don't get it built, that's what gets lost every 4 weeks. And I guess to give some context to why we're pushing is it's real money. As we sit here and wait 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or whatever, there's just $100,000 you never get back in tax base. So whatever can be done to expedite would be appreciated, as we do think the project as a whole has a tremendous amount of tax base. And with the number of sites, as we talked about, Rutabaga, where they're tearing a building down to create tax base, you know, you only have so much to work with, unfortunately, in Monona, which is good and bad. One of my clients is coming back to Monona. We were talking about it. One of the Klinke brothers will be coming back. I thought he was listening. They were good, man. But there are people that do enjoy this city and like it for what it is, and we know that. But you only got so much land to work with. So anything you could do to help expedite or create a certainty would be appreciated. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dick Adler, who would like to speak about the street name change for Squaw Circle. Welcome back.
No kissing during
Haven't seen her in 15 years, and we're friends going way back. I mean, awesome to have her here. My name is Dick Adler, 5703 Squaw Circle, Monona. I'm one of 3 residents on the street. That's all there is. The other resident is the city of Monona. They own the pumping station right across from us. I was here in April, came back in May, was referred to the Public Works Committee, was at their last meeting, and was back here. I think we had a meeting in June, or did we skip June? June. So my purpose of being here today is to continue the discussion on changing the name of Squaw Circle. The council had pushed this off to the Public Works Committee, and we had a long discussion at the last meeting they had, and we talked about the pros and cons. We are definitely for doing something for Kathy Thomas. We think she's earned it, she deserves it, she's elegant, she's dignified, and Monona should say thank you, thank you, thank you to her for 22 years of service, I think.
37.
Sorry, 27.
37.
No, sorry. That's not the issue. The issue we have is that our street's the wrong place to put her name. Our street is going to get no exposure for her whatsoever. She needs to be dignified in the area where people can see what she accomplished and what she stood for. That will never happen by naming our street Kathy Thomas Way. So we want you to know that we're very for that. The second issue is that we are in an area of 4 streets. We're a community of 4 streets. On top of the hill is Birchhaven Circle. Next is Delwood Circle. Next is Cove Circle. And next is us, Ruth Ann just left, Squaw Circle. So to put a street in there with her name and with the word way is the wrong place, the wrong time to do it. We recommended several names to the Public Works Committee, and they agreed with us. They came up with, why not call it what it is? It's been Squaw Circle because of Squaw Bay. Squaw Bay now has changed to...
Weechawak.
Yes. Why not continue that continuity with the new name? They voted on it. They voted unanimously to do that and recommend that to the City Council. That's where it sits right now. And I for that all the way. So my purpose of being here is, do you vote tonight or do not vote tonight? Where are we as far as the council?
Well, it's on the agenda to be discussed and probably voted on tonight.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions from anybody on the council?
I think we really are not supposed to be interacting with
Oh, okay.
people are speaking.
An issue that came up, my notes, issue came up not too the last meeting that, well, in Monona, we don't have any streets named after females, ladies. Well, I did a little research myself. I drove around Monona. We do have my neighbor, no street called Kelly Place. Kelly's the name, and go right or left. I understand that. You go the other way from where I live, and there's a street called Joyce Road. That's a lady as far as I'm concerned. You go a little further the other way, there's a circle called Christie Circle. That's the lady. If you go where I used to live, it's called Valerie Lane. That's the lady. Ruth Ann just left. She'd love this. But the queen of all queens of Native Americans, Pocahontas. So that's a moot point to say that we don't have streets in Monona named after a female. Completely wrong. Outside of that, I hope that you see the traditions, the culture, and the community that we live in, that little area, Monona, that's part of the Bay. And we appreciate your support. We agree with the Public Works Committee to change the name to what they recommended. We're happy to live with that, and we're very supportive of doing something which is dignified and elegant for Kathy Thomas, plaque someplace, a room someplace, name the beach next to her, that's Crosswoods Beach, Kathy Thomas Beach, or Park. Any of those are better than to put her name on the street. That's very small, that is a circle, and of all things, we have something on our street that's different. We have a pump that's been named after the street. You talk to anybody in Monona, anybody in Public Works, they refer to that as Squaw Circle Pump. It's a big pumping station that is very important to how things get moved out of our area and along the lake. So I don't think we want to associate a name of Kathy Thomas on the street that has a sewage pumping station.
Okay, thank you.
Is that unified? No way. So thank you for your time. Thank you for hearing me out. And again, it was nice seeing all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Matt Adler, also wants to speak on Squaw Circle.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for having me. I made a deal with my mom. I would speak and she wouldn't, so that's to the benefit of all of you. Thankfully,
I think we heard that deal last time.
You might need him to escort you out to the car. Both doesn't take a nice job if I need to, but digress. Chief, I love what you and your team are doing with the stolen vehicles and not letting them do in Monona what they're doing in some other parts of this county. So I like the recaps that your team provides, and hopefully the message is getting out. So thank you for the support of that. But I made a deal with my mom. I said, Mom, if you keep it under control, then I'll be here and every good son obeys his mom. So Matt Adler, 1102 Birchhaven Circle, 46 years old and never looked a lot younger. Born and raised in Monona. I've lived here 40 years. Of my 46, got away for college a couple years after college. I love Monona. Absolutely love it. I love it because of the people. I love it because of everything it offers. It's been made the way it has been for me in my 46 years because of the leadership. And when this all came about, this name changing, I didn't grow up on Squaw Circle. I grew up on Valerie Lane. That's my childhood home. But Squaw Circle was home to me from 1995 on. My parents have been residents here 50 plus years. I've been a homeowner since 2008. So my wife and our two little girls don't plan on leaving Monona, knock on wood, unless you guys force us out. But this name change, I think Alder Wood said it best, it was a flawed process. And I think if we're being true leaders, we'll admit that it was a flawed process. It was a rushed process. We knew that the Squaw Circle name had to get changed, in line with the Bay a few years ago from the county. And no one is disputing that. It does need to get changed. It's obscene name. And so with the untimely passing of Kathy, obviously, I think I understand. I'm trying to, educate my parents, but the timing on that was such where it kind of made sense, and I can see where you guys, as a council, said, you know what? We just lost a Titan, we lost a colleague, we lost a friend. My parents know Kathy and her husband Bill, not as well as a lot of you do, but they respect the heck out of the Thomases. Having said that, this process was rushed in that when she passed, it kind of, when you're changing the street name, you would think.
And I see where you guys, as a council, said, you know what? We just lost a Titan, we lost a colleague, we lost a friend.
Oops.
Hearing an echo.
I think, Nancy just logged in, so.
maybe that's what it is. But you would think you would get some opinion and some input from those residents, right? I don't care if it's Winifred Road that has the majority of Monona residents, or Little Squaw Circle that has my mom, my dad, Miss Hunnell, unfortunately Mrs. Pringle just passed, but regardless of if it's a 3-house street or a 500-house street, someone on the council or the Public Works should have solicited feedback, should have said, hey, we're proposing this name change, what do you think? That didn't happen. So I think we can learn from that, and I chalk it up as emotion. You guys lost a good friend, you lost a colleague. I just lost a sister in April, my parents lost a daughter in April. We get pain and suffering, but that doesn't make necessarily things right. In this proposal, again, the meaning behind it was probably based on some emotion, and that's okay. But let's collectively come back as a group It went through the process. The process worked in this regard. It was referred to Public Works. I want to publicly thank Dan from Public Works and Marion, because when my parents caught wind of this through the Community Herald, that their street name, again, they don't own the street. Neighbor Bonnie doesn't own the street, but you'd like to be included. You'd like to be included in what it's going to be changed to. When they caught wind, they reached out to you, Marion. And then you outlined and articulated the process on which reached out to Public Works. My dad's followed all the steps. This process worked. Public Works came back and recommended, and I've learned, I've been calling it Weekowack since the day it was named Weekowack. It's Chowik, thank you. That's what Public Works recommended. That's the process worked here. So again, I feel that your emotion, you know what loss feels like, unfortunately. She's a great friend, colleague, and I think my dad said it best. We drive by her house almost daily. Frostwoods Beach is an awesome, awesome beach. I spent a lot of time there as a kid. This is just one idea. Why not name that Kathy Thomas Park at Frostwoods Beach or something? You guys are a lot smarter than I am, but I love this city. I just wish this process would have included the input of the residents of Squaw Circle, and hopefully common sense prevails here, and you follow through with the recommendation from the Public Works Department. So
Thank
you for your time.
Next, Ryan Lay of Breakwater, who would like to speak about the amplified device ordinance.
I didn't come with anything prepared today because I didn't know this was how the process worked.
We try to keep it to about 3 minutes, just so you know.
Okay. So I'd like to just speak briefly in favor of the recommendation from the ALRC that we've had a couple meetings on to discuss the way that the ordinance has affected business, our business, as well as the musicians' business in limiting the amount of amplified permits. We're celebrating our 7th year, actually today, our 7-year anniversary of Breakwater, and for the first 5 years, we were able to have the unlimited permits. Then last year, with no notice to us, the ordinance was changed to only allow 45, and that has had a direct impact on our revenue, as well as the musicians' revenue, and just the community in general who's coming in to hear music, and we had to tell them that no, we can no longer provide the same business model we did for the first 5 years. And just coming out of the floods and the construction and the pandemic, it's just another sort of kick that we're trying to come back and keep the business alive. So I would just hope that you guys will see the 5 days a week business model that we had amounted to about 75 to 80 permits per season. The 45 is what it was changed to, and I think we met at the ALRC halfway in between at the 60, which I believe is what was recommended tonight. So I'm just hoping you'll find in your hearts to vote that in a positive direction.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Maybe you already addressed this, but how would you say it affects besides the number of customers you get, nights you have music versus nights that you don't?
I believe we decided last time we asked the same question, and I would say that on the nights that we don't have music, it's probably a third to a half the revenue than the night that we'd have a band that would draw a crowd in and bring us more business. That happens on the weekends. We used to have it. Now we're kind of limited to Wednesday, Thursday, and a handful of holiday weekends. But we definitely see an uptick when we have live music, for sure. And it's also the musicians who are coming out of the pandemic where they were not able to play out at all or anything. They're struggling to try to build their business back too. So it's kind of affecting both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One question. Do I stay back and listen to the discussion? When would that
Sure you can. We won't be getting to that for a while,
Okay.
but you're welcome to stay.
Well,
Sure.
I will put my trust in you when I'm at home because I've been working all day long.
All right. Okay, I think that is all the appearances that I'm aware of, unless you've heard of anyone more. There's no public hearing, there is no consent agenda. Moving on to council action items, under 1A, renewal application for the 2023-2024 Class B fermented malt beverage and Class B liquor licenses for Blazing Wings Incorporated, Glen Lake Parkway, Atlanta, Georgia. 30328, doing business as Buffalo Wild Wings at 6544 Monona Drive. This is put forth by the License Review Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Doug, do you want to take the lead on this?
Sure. We discussed, as we discussed last time, the Monona PD was doing sort of their annual license check, and it was discovered that they did not have any operators on premises, which obviously is a huge concern. The whole approach of the License Review Commission is we're concerned about the control of the sale and consumption of alcohol on premises. So to have no one there who was a licensed operator is very concerning, as well as being a violation of state statutes. The Buffalo Wild Wings was invited to 2 LRC meetings and did not make either one of those. They did come, let's see, yeah, they came here to the council at the second meeting in June, I believe. And we had suggested, and so it's now on for a second read. I don't know if there's someone here from Buffalo Wild Wings. Okay. So I guess for me to feel comfortable approving it, I want to hear more about what happened, and more importantly, what's the plan to make sure this doesn't happen.
If you'd like to take a seat up here. If you could identify yourself and your role with Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, my name is James Semro. I'm the general manager at Buffalo Wild Wings in Monona. I recognize that there was an oversight, and I apologize for that. As the license from 2022 is expiring, the previous management team that was there at the time had all chosen to leave. My management team and I started on the 28th, so 2 days before the license needed to be renewed. We were coming from the city of Madison, and we failed to consider the fact that we were licensed in Madison and not Monona, and that is on us, and I apologize for that. I did bring with me, if it's something that you wanted to see, we all were ServSafe certified throughout the entirety of the year. So it isn't that we weren't trained or that we didn't properly understand how to serve the alcohol safely. We did, in fact, miss the licensing portion of it, and again, that's on us, and I apologize for that. We were in the restaurant in the Monona store, our training completed middle to late August, so that's when our management team started there. We are now currently licensed provisionally through the 2023 year. We did the 2-year license to complete, or to make up for 2022, and then also to complete 2023. We do have in place at the store level, including getting the license after the ServSafe training is completed, to be done immediately upon the completion of manager training. At our corporate level, we are also changing reporting to include licensing to be tracked. And in addition to that, we are also going to start having our bartenders be licensed sellers as well. Our entire front of house team is ServSafe certified. So there's nobody who handles alcohol or does anything with alcohol that is not trained and can effectively sell it within the letter of the law. But we're going to take that a step further than is mandated and ensure that our alcohol pourers or servers are also licensed to ensure that something like this will never happen again.
Doug, did you have any questions?
No, I don't think I have any follow-up.
Yes, does anyone else have? Brian?
Yeah, I think the only question
I do. Let's let Brian go and then Patrick, okay?
I think at our last meeting there was this conversation of at the last meeting we were missing a page in the application, we said to receive that.
Okay.
And it was the connection of some other violations that had happened from the corporate level in a variety of other locations. And so there was a series of 3, 6, 7 or 8 different violations that were very similar to this violation in different states. And I think that's part of what Alder Wood was getting at was, you know, there's one thing at a store level, and then there's one thing at a general management level, but also looking at kind of the ownership of this from a corporate level and the connection of it, and not wanting to see this as a repeat issue. So that was one piece that when we saw this, I think it kind of validated some of the concerns of like, hang on, wait a minute, like this wasn't just a rare occurrence on a larger scale level. It might be, you know, a single occurrence at the store level. So I appreciate kind of your statement of how this is being tracked at both the corporate level and as well as part of the management trainee schedule and how that fits in. Doug, did I have it correct that the license review committee it wasn't approved at that level for our previous read? Has it since been approved at the license review level?
No. Once it came here, it doesn't go back unless we send it back.
How is it, maybe you could explain how it is that they're continuing to serve without having gotten the license?
Ask Elaine.
Elaine, can you?
They got a provisional.
We're covering provisional.
Provisional dealer's license, which is allowable by state statute. So they did request that. It was my
And so does it also need to be approved at the license review committee prior to this body?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I think the LRC understood, you know, once it came here that we would almost, you know, sort of do the same thing LRC would have done, you know, if we had a representative there. So, no, there's no need for it to go back.
Okay. Okay.
Patrick?
I think Brian actually asked the questions that I was looking for, so
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, I was just curious. You mentioned that different management teams came in.
Mm-hmm.
There was a wholesale change.
Yeah, the entire, my team and I, as I said previously, worked in Madison where we were licensed, and the entire team swapped out. So when we got there, there was not an existing management team in place.
So
When did you get there?
We started June 28 of 2022.
Oh, okay.
Was this precipitated by a change of ownership, or what caused the swap out?
I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry, I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah.
So there was an entire team in Madison who then moved to Monona.
I'm sorry, we came from Chili's. We came from a different organization.
Oh.
Yeah.
A different organization completely?
Correct, yes.
So Buffalo Wild Wings was able to hire an entire existing team from Chili's to here?
Yes.
Is that because Chili's closed, or what happened?
Chili's did not close, no. We, I mean, I'd be happy to talk. It's not super
I think
relevant
this is all
to
kind of a moot point, really.
Well, I
because it
just
was
wondered why
a year
something
ago.
like that would happen and how there was no communication between the previous team and the next team.
I can't speak to what was before me. I don't know. But, you know, what we can do is we can, you know, continue to make the changes that I spoke of earlier, and ensure that these things aren't going to happen again. Like I said, I take ownership for the responsibility of not having us licensed at the proper time. It was an oversight on our part, and, you know, it was inexcusable, which is why we're here.
And Chili's served alcohol?
Yes, but that was from the city of Madison, so
Okay,
it's a different
right.
city.
Right,
Yeah.
but you're familiar with what the requirements are?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If there's nothing else, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving on, our other item under unfinished business is consideration of ordinance 6-23-767, an ordinance renaming Squaw Circle to Weechawak Circle, put forth by the Public Works Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
I move approval.
I'll second. Discussion. Dan, did you want to address this at all?
The only thing I have to add, Mayor, is that since the first reading at City Council, there have been no new comments received. So nothing changes coming from me or the Public Works Committee to City Council.
I did get an email from a Monona resident in support of the name change that I think I forwarded to the whole council a week or so ago.
The name change.
In support of changing it to Kathy.
Right.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that. Patrick, did you have
Yes.
anything to say?
I mean, obviously, I still feel very strongly about doing what we initially talked about as a council, which was honoring Kathy with naming that street after her. Regardless of whether or not Kathy lived on a particular street in Monona, Kathy represented all of Monona. And I think that trying to designate a specific location, location because someone lived in a particular spot, I guess I don't see how that's relevant since she represented all of Monona for almost 40 years. And this was proposed, and I'd like to clear that up, this was proposed before Kathy passed, so it wasn't an emotional knee-jerk reaction based upon Kathy passing. This was an attempt to honor a colleague that had served on the council for 4 years who was retiring. And as Doug mentioned at the last meeting, we had a council meeting where we discussed this in front of Kathy's family, who were in agreement that this was an appropriate honor. So, in my opinion, I would like to continue what we had originally discussed as a council regarding renaming the street after Alder Thomas. And yeah, that's what I have.
Does anyone else have any? Or Aldermore, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up there.
That's
Go
quite
ahead.
right, Mayor. Thank you. I would just like to say that I would like to reiterate that I do not anticipate that this is the last thing we will do for Kathy Thomas.
No.
You know, as several people have mentioned, you know, whether it's naming a public safety building after her, or maybe the new council room in the new city hall after her, or whatever might be possibilities moving forward, all of which are possible because she in fact did serve for nearly 40 years and touched virtually every aspect of Monona in the process. There'll be no doubt numerous other opportunities to acknowledge her incredible service to this community, but this is something we can do now, something that the family embraced, and I think something that, as was originally proposed by Alder DePula, something that is appropriate from the standpoint of there are many other things in Monona that are named after other former mayors, former guide business owners, and there's literally nothing named after the women that have contributed to this community. So I respect the Public Works decision, but I would advocate for the council passing this in Kathy's honor, recognizing again that this is not the last of what we will do given the lion that she was in this community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderwood?
Yeah, I won't reiterate all my comments from last time, in fact, none of them, but I would note that even though Squaw Circle is a very short street, it's Ani Street that carries in that stretch, about 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles a day that drive past the street sign. So it will be somewhat visible. Oh, the other thing I think we do have was pointed out, we have names of streets that are feminine, I guess, is maybe the best way to characterize it. I don't believe any of those, however, were named for leaders of the village and then the city, whereas we have numerous that are named for men, such as Mathis and Big Boats and Waterman Way, and those were three that come to mind immediately. So I think it wasn't so much that we don't have streets named for women like Pocahontas or feminine names, but we have not honored any of our women leaders in that way.
Anyone else? Alder Moore, Alder Moore, is your hand up again, or does it need to just?
Sorry, no, it's not.
Okay. Anyone else? Brian?
Sure. So I can kind of speak to, Patrick kind of hinted towards this, that the initial change and the initial direction from this body was really looking at a name change and the process for Public Works. At that time, I was the chair of Public Works, and we had some initial discussions about what a process might look like. We were in the process of looking at what has existed in our previous situations when we've looked at name changes, and we were exploring some of those avenues to figure that part out. At the same time, that's when a request was made, and actually I co-sponsored that request, and it was in honoring someone who was retiring. And a colleague that was retiring, Patrick kind of pushed that forward, and I agreed with him that that was an appropriate opportunity to kind of put that as one of the options available. And at a council level, we agreed to kind of send that to the Public Works Committee. There was some change in that process in the sense of, like, it's a normal timing that some of us change chairs of what groups we're a part of. At that time, I think there was also some discussion of, like, wait a minute, if some of the individuals on Public Works were like, okay, you told us A, but then you told us B, what do you want us to do? And there was some additional discussion about, like, well, there was a strong commitment to B, and I think to some of what some of our speakers shared today and what we've heard from other comments, you're right, there are times that things change along the way. And I think one of those changes along the way, it started with, we need to rename the road. We should have done it a long time ago. And initially it started with, how are we going to do it? It then fell on the heels of a motion and from this group to consider it being named after someone that was retiring from this group, who's made a significant contribution to the city as a whole. And I stand by that. I do know one of those pieces of the request at that Public Works Committee, even when I was a part of it, and Dan's here, he can definitely chime in if need be. And one of those was to reach out to the individuals on that street to also gather information from them. That was one of the items as part of when we were looking at what is the process. If we go backwards and look at what other streets have been renamed in this city, there have been a couple that I think we found, and Dan definitely chime in if I misspeak here. One had to do when a development went in and change happened as part of the development. No conversation. There was no Public Works meeting on it. The name changed. And other than that, we weren't able to locate any other process that has existed. And I can tell you from my day job, renaming is a very difficult process, a very, very difficult process. It can be. I work with the Madison School District, and we've gone through a variety of renaming some schools recently, and it can
it can bring a lot of information to light. And I think what we have here is, we knew we needed to change something. We were initiating a process. In that initial stages, this group sent another message saying, we'd like this to be a consideration. And I support that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Rick?
I believe Doug and Nancy, you sponsored this originally. Was your original intention just to remove the name Squaw from the street name, but not necessarily to rename it anything in particular?
So initially, yes, that was the idea, was that we were basically telling Public Works that we were going to change the name and come up with a new name. And then before they, as Brian outlined, before they really got started on that process, the council passed the resolution, the second one. I don't remember the exact wording, but to the effect that the council would like to see the name be changed to Kathy Thomas Circle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Is the process not to take it to Public Works though, after?
Okay, I'm sorry, but we can't interact with the
You guys
audience.
are voted to be the voice of the people.
Right, and we have a process for you making statements,
Personal
okay?
agenda. This is a
Thank
personal
you.
favor.
It's not a personal favor for anyone, but Kathy was not even aware of the possibility, so I wouldn't call it a personal favor, but, okay, can we,
He just made it.
please,
How in love he was.
please, can we have order here? Thank you.
If I could.
We know how you folks feel, okay? Rick, did you have another question?
I guess what I would say is that I think the same impetus to change the name of the bay is the same motivation to change the name of the circle. And I do like the symmetry between changing both of those to the same. And another point might be that we don't have a lot of street names in Native American language, so this would be a nice introduction to do that as well. So I think there's sentiment and progressive reasons to do that, as well as change the name of the circle. So I am supportive of changing it to Weekichuk.
Alderwood.
yeah, I would just point out the Public Works Committee is an advisory body. Their job is to advise the council. They don't make the final decisions, and we don't have to accept what their recommendation is. So it did go through the process, and now we could, we could either agree with what they came up with or change it.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
I think, Nancy, and then Doug, you can come back to Doug. Is that okay? Nancy, what's your?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as it relates to, as somebody who was involved in the support of changing the name of the bay, the city of Winona, and I know is in process, has been in process for quite some time, working with the Ho-Chunk Nation for a land acknowledgement statement that would apply to certainly all of our parks, if not the entire city of Winona. So, so this is not by changing the street name. This is not in any way slighting the reality or ignoring the reality that we all sit on the ancestral lands of the Ho-Chunk and indigenous peoples before them. I wholeheartedly support the city's efforts in crafting a land acknowledgement statement, which is another whole issue. Again, that is more of a citywide and certainly a park-wide thing. But I, in some respects, actually, I feel like the naming of a street, a single street, a smaller street, I guess I would say that I don't find the cemetery to be all that important because the bay is, the bay does not belong to the city of Monona. The bay, which is exactly why it took 2+ years to get it through the U.S. Bureau of Geological Names, because the bay belongs to everyone. And so I guess I'm not seeing the cemetery, and again, I would support the changing of the name of the street in honor of Alder Thomas.
Thank you. Alderwood, did you have a question?
Yeah, a procedural question, I guess. Right now, the resolution in section 1 simply says Squaw Circle is hereby renamed Wechowik Circle. So would it be appropriate then to offer an amendment to change, in that sentence, change Wechowik to Kathy Thomas?
I'm assuming that. Is that correct, Neil?
My recommendation would be to propose it as an amendment.
Yeah. So I'll move that to amend section 1 of the resolution in front of us and replace the word Wechowik in that sentence to Kathy Thomas.
Is there a second? Patrick, second with Alder DePula. Any further discussion on this motion?
Yeah.
Rick?
Well, the fourth whereas seems to have lost its relevance.
No, I don't agree. I mean, that just lays out, I did go back and sort of read through it again here. That just lays out the process that happened, and that is, in fact, at their June 7th meeting, they did make that recommendation.
Okay. So it just, I think the spirit underlying putting that whereas in there is because it's going to precede a suggestion to vote as Weekachuk, but it seems to me there's no rationale that supports the naming to Kathy Thomas in this resolution.
Rick, I think maybe there's some explanation that we need to give about amending resolutions.
Yeah,
I don't think it depends on what's in the original resolution.
Right. I mean, the action part of this resolution is after the now therefore that the council does ordain as follows. I understand what you're saying, and I suppose we could go back and add a whereas clause to explaining why we want to name it for Kathy Thomas.
Wouldn't that
does
be a
reference
Yeah, I
the
think
resolution that we passed. I don't see. I mean,
I think the document.
I'm pretty sure I can count the votes. I just don't see the point of doing that to bring it back here yet again when it's been here how many times? This is like the 4th or 5th time I think we've discussed it. So to me, it's much simpler to just, if that's the decision of the council, to just get on with it. Well,
Okay, well, I'm going to vote no, I guess.
Did anyone else have anything to say on the
Mayor,
amendment? Dan?
Yes, if I could provide some clarification, answer some questions. I think there's been some dialogue here that's not entirely accurate. I do have Resolution 23-2-2619 in front of me. That's the initial resolution from City Council to the Public Works Committee. The Public Works Committee initially discussed this at our March 2nd meeting. Alder Thomas passed away, I believe, on March 12th.
Yes.
So the initial resolution that came to the Public Works Committee, as identified as 23-2-2619, it was on February 20th of 2023 where City Council adopted Resolution 23-2-2612, which directs the Public Works Committee to recommend a new name for the street currently known as Squaw Circle. Now, Mayor, I could read a few of these other whereas that helps point out of why City Council directed the Public Works Committee to discuss it. I think there's 3 different whereas there that I could read a few if you want me to take the time to do that real quick.
Oh, I think we understand why we wanted to rename it. Is that
But-
what the whereases focus on?
But if you want me to state it for those in the room, possibly. Otherwise, I just wanted to clarify the timing of when this came to committee versus when Alder Thomas passed.
I think it might
Thank
be
you, I
helpful.
appreciate that. Brian, do you want to,
I think it might be helpful, Dan.
you want to have him read that?
Yeah.
Sure, Dan, if you'd like to share that, that'd be
Okay.
fine.
The second whereas, while there are numerous city of Monona streets named for men who were founding members of the community and/or served in city government, there are no such streets named for women. And whereas, March is Women's History Month, which commemorates and encourages the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role of women in American history. And whereas, serving almost 4 decades as an alderperson, Kathy Thomas played a vital role in the history of Monona. Those were the significant resolution, or whereas in that resolution.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I thought, when I said that, I was thinking of the whereases focused more on SQUA not being an appropriate name.
Mayor?
Yes, Nancy Aldermore?
So, assuming that those, as Dan just read, assuming that those are very appropriate for the resolution, as opposed to going back and writing a whole new resolution, is it possible that there could be a friendly amendments along with the vote, or friendly amendment to adopt those three lines to insert instead of the current resolution as a second amendment, and then we could take a vote on to Rick's point. Then we could take a vote on the new motion and the new resolution without further delay.
I don't see a problem with that, do you? Neil,
I think that it certainly replaced the motion, I guess, or a further amendment, a motion to replace that one paragraph Alder with those three that were just read from the previous resolution, if that would be acceptable.
Well, I think if we want to add those three to what we have, that would be good. I wouldn't want to take out the fact that Public Works made that recommendation. I mean, that's what happened, and
I agree. I agree.
But to add those three, and I would point out that resolution 23-3-2619 is referenced in the current resolution. But I think it would create a better record if we did add those three whereases. So I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
So we would add those after the fourth whereas?
Right.
Of the current amendment. Okay, is there a second, or?
Second.
I'm not sure, okay. Okay, is there any further, any discussion on Alder Moore's amendment to add the three whereases from the original resolution to this one?
So are we also including my original amendment, or?
I was going to vote on that separately after we voted on this.
We're going to vote this is just on the, okay.
Is that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Content, yes.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, all in favor of approving Alder Moore's amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Now we are back to Alder Wood's amendment to change the word SQUA.
No, Wichewak.
I'm sorry, Wichewak, I'm sorry, to Kathy Thomas.
Right.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes. And then we are back to the original motion as amended, correct? So all in, which would be naming as amended, changing the name to Kathy Thomas Circle and making the changes in the resolution. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I oppose.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Item 2A, consideration of temporary Class B fermented malt beverage.
Thanks a lot. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Live there all, and they can do that? What an embarrassment. Live there.
Consideration of temporary Class B
Somebody they love.
fermented malt beverage and Class B wine retailers licenses for Friends of San Damiano. President Andrew Kitzler, 4514 Midmore Road, Monona, Wisconsin, 53716, for the period of September 8th, 2023, put forth by the License Review Committee, and this is starred for immediate approval.
Move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there?
Abstain.
Did you say aye, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
I abstain.
Oh, you abstain. So we
Yes.
have three. Patrick abstained. Rick, did you have?
No. Yeah, I vote no.
You vote no?
Yeah.
Okay. Then motion passes. Then is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Approval.
Second.
Any discussion? I think this is for use at the Gala fundraising event on September 8th.
Correct.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Abstain.
Motion passes with Alder DePula abstaining. Next, item 2B, this is consideration of temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and Class B wine retailers licenses for Monona East Side Business Alliance, Christine Welcher, 10 Westbrook Circle, Madison, Wisconsin, 53711, for the period of September 30th, 2023. License Review Committee, this is also starred for immediate approval.
Move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Yeah, no.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
And I think this is for the chili cook-off.
Correct.
Okay.
That is good.
All in favor, are there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes, thank you. Item C, consideration of Resolution 23-7-2632, award of contract for 2023 Public Works Garage HVAC improvements, put forth by the Facilities and Public Works Committees. Is there, I guess this is just under new business, so Dan is going to address this, I think. I'm not sure if Brad's there. Oh, he is there, with Oscar, I think.
Yeah.
So whoever's going to address this,
I'll address it.
okay.
Everybody can hear me, I hope.
Mhm.
Great. The low bid, the apparent low bidder is J.M. Brennan with $52,860 on the bid. The budgeted amount is $110,000. The discrepancy in the low bid versus the amount budgeted is the fact that we removed a portion of the scope of the project, fairly significant portion that would have otherwise put it over budget, which is a makeup air system, which will be addressed in the 2025 capital budget for the rooftop replacement and building envelope improvements. This is recommended by the Facilities Committee and the Public Works Committee. It will go to the Public Works Committee on August 1st for approval, and then back to the City Council on August 7th. And I would recommend, that this moves forward. So, thank you.
And I think you said at Finance and Personnel that this project is taking place over 3 years, did you say?
Yes.
3 pieces?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there any need to?
There's engineering next year for the other portion of this project.
Yeah, I think this needs to go to Public Works.
Oh, okay.
In beginning of August.
Yep. That's
Any
correct.
questions for Dan or Brad?
Thanks for showing off the baby, Brad.
Yeah, he's very cute.
Hey, guys. Wow.
Mary, I just
He's
have
getting
one.
big and he's getting very tired.
I think Brian does have one question.
Yeah.
Brad, can you tell us, you mentioned that there was a future portion of the project. Is there any issue if the future portion of the project did not happen?
There would be. The future portion of this project is a makeup air system. It's very expensive. It's a thanks for coming in, CC. The makeup air system is to make sure that when the ventilation system, which is required by building codes, turns on, that the fresh air that comes in during the winter can cool off the public works garage by 15 degrees in less than 30 minutes. So the staff that are in the garage will get very cold very fast. And, gosh, perfect timing.
You're outnumbered.
So the makeup air system heats up the garage instantaneously as the fresh air comes in, and that system is fairly involved and therefore highly expensive. And it's so that the crews that are working in there in sub-zero temperatures outside are not frozen out in the interior of the garage, which they have been lately. So it's not only a comfort thing, but it's just operationally necessary.
Patrick?
Just to reiterate what he's saying, I mean, having to deal with makeup air constantly in my restaurants, I mean, it's a energy efficiency thing too. I mean, if you're taking that air out of space, you need to have tempered air return to the space, otherwise your heating costs are just going to be ridiculous. So it's absolutely necessary.
And that's a great point, Alder DePula, sorry. What's happening now is that they've basically shut off the ventilation system inside the garage because during the wintertime, it freezes them out completely. And if they're not getting fresh air inside of a building with diesel exhaust and other kinds of exhaust fumes, it's not a good thing, and they need that. And so we're just trying to bring this, into the 21st century and make sure that the building is operational and comfortable for our staff.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up is I'm curious of why, if it's such a needed piece of it, and I understand budgetary why, but am I understanding correctly, the only reason that it was kicked down the can is there wasn't enough money budgeted for the full project to be executed now, but it's causing us to potentially expect a future council, because it wouldn't be this budget cycle, it would be the following budget cycle, to be approved. Like you're hedging that someone a year and a half from now is going to be approving a project that you're telling me is important last year.
Dan, do you want to address that?
I believe this goes back to when the garage was constructed, all the way back to 1986. I think this has been the case with that air exchange unit. So this is not something that's new that we just started not doing. This has been something that's been probably faulty since construction.
All right, but the other portions of the project that we are going to do, part of my curiosity is like, why didn't we bring the full project, even if it was going to exceed what we had allocated, which was 110,000? If it was going to exceed that, like, for us to have that decision, are we going to exceed monetarily right now and cover the whole project, or only do bits and pieces now? And maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
I think, did you go out to bid and it came back too high? Was that what happened?
Mayor, if I could?
Yes, Dan.
The bigger picture of this last year, when we presented this, we had capital budget restrictions last year, going into the committee review. There's an even larger component to the HVAC that Brad is talking about. We need a new roof. We need insulation under that roof because of multiple leaks. There's siding replacement along a few panels on the outside. So in addition to the HVAC upgrades that Brad's talking about that we want to do this year, and the air exchange unit that's 2 years down the road, there's also more to this phase two, regarding the roof and the leaks and insulation.
And that's what we'll be doing engineering for next year, or next year is for the roof replacement, I think, correct? I think.
I believe in addition to what Brad is talking about for the air exchange, we have the next phase on there as well for the roof.
That's correct. Can I add to that, please?
Sure.
The ventilation system, as it is designed for building codes that were, back in the 1980s. So right now, the way that the system is designed for diesel and carbon monoxide exhausting, they're exhausting the space that's inside the public works garage, is not to code. It has to be updated.
Okay.
And so not only will the ventilation fans be replaced in 2025, but also the makeup air system will be added in 2025. So it's a two-phase project, like Dan said. And we're not doing any of the items this year that would affect the exterior. And so all of the exterior improvements would happen in 2025. We would engineer those improvements in 2024. And so we're not touching the building envelope in any kind of way with this project. Everything is interior to the inside of the public works garage. You start touching things that are on the outside, like a makeup air system, ventilation fans. You have to patch in siding, rooftop, what have you. And it just makes more sense to do that all in one larger project down the road, as opposed to doing it in this budget cycle.
Alder Moore.
Yeah, so Brad, as a follow-up to that, I guess my question is, I understand that there's, I understand the phases involved as you and Dan have described it. I guess my question would be, will the city be paying significantly more to be phasing it in over a 3-year period as opposed to when we originally budgeted it this year?
No, the inflation is starting to come down. The costs for ventilation fans have been fairly steady according to the couple of quotes that we've gotten. And so the makeup air system is the bulk of that cost.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I would like to go back to the drawing board on the makeup air system and see if we can get some different design quotes, something that maybe fits the building a little bit more. I feel like what we got was the Rolls Royce of makeup air systems for the public works garage. And I don't know if we need it. It might be more suited to get something that's a little bit less involved for that space. The public works garage tends to be a space that the doors are open in the summer 90% of the time that operations are occurring inside the building. It doesn't run during the summer, but at the same time it does run during the fall and the spring, so it's one of those things that's it's going to have to be managed in a certain way, and we should probably go back to the drawing board with it. The quote that we got was not from an engineer necessarily, but from a contractor.
Yeah.
And so they may have been looking to design it in a way that suits their business as opposed to suits the need. And I would like to see if we can't get that enhanced, revised, more suited to what we need for that facility.
Fantastic, Brad. I appreciate it, and as always, appreciate you for the wonderful geek you are on all this stuff. An expert. You know, as always, I just wanted to be attentive to the city's budget, as I know you do, and I appreciate your clarity around all of that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And this will come back on the next agenda. So, anything else? Okay, moving on to the next item, D, consideration of resolution. Thank you, guys. Consideration of resolution 23-7-2633, expressing a commitment to protect transgender and non-binary individuals, put forth by Alder Wood, Alder Rademacher, Alder Bernstein, and myself. Doug, would you like to address this?
Sure. Well, first of all, that was my grandson, Evan, who spoke earlier, if you didn't know, and I think he's spoke very eloquently the need to at least, we can't do a whole lot on this issue. There is a little bit in the resolution directing, or asking rather, the police chief to make it a little priority if some of these particular health care provision becomes criminalized in Wisconsin. But I think a lot of it is just they are under attack. I think that was clear from Evan's comments that that's how they feel, and just following the news, it's pretty clear they are under attack. To express a sort of an affirmation of their value as full-fledged human beings and not in any way second class.
Thank you, and I think you can be very proud of Evan. He's as old as my 12-year-old grandson, and I can't imagine.
Yeah.
That takes a lot.
Well, it's kind of a wow for me, too.
Yeah.
That's my grandson.
Anyone have any other comments or questions for Doug? Alder Bernstein?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate Doug on doing this. I know why he's doing it, but it really, the emotion and the compassion that it shows really comes through, and I'm very proud to have my name on it, but to be truthful, I think Doug took the lead, and I think he deserves the lion's share of the credit, but I'm glad that the city is considering it, and I really hope it passes.
Alder Moore.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I would have been glad to put my name on it. And I also wanted to speak to something that Evan said. I thought I'd share a brief story. One of the things that Evan, first of all, I thank Doug and Evan for bringing this forward. And second, one of the things that Evan said was that transgenders and transgender rights have been, very much a part of our history. And, I'm reminded of now 20 years ago when I was spending more time as an adventure travel guide. And one of the places that I guided in the world was an area called Cuniala, which is the northern coast of Panama. It's a 365 islands of white sand and coconut trees, populated by the Kuna Indians, one of 6 indigenous peoples of that region, but a sovereign people, still separate from the country of Panama, that have fought over years for their rights and remain sovereign. And they live in small communities on these small islands off the northern coast of Panama. And one of their primary currencies, they're descendants of the Mayans, and one of their primary currencies is creating these beautiful molas, appliques, that are primarily created by the women. But in fact, they have a transgender community of mola makers. And they're known as the master mola makers because the transgender Kuna, who make those molas, those beautiful applique pieces, are really, really talented. And they're celebrated within the community. And this is something that's been going on for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years by the Kuna. So it's just a small data point among, I'm sure, many, that this is just, what's going on now is just absurd. And we should be doing everything we can to support wherever anyone is on the continuum as it relates to their sexuality, and I wholeheartedly support this resolution.
Thank you. Alder DePula.
I just wanted to say I 100% support this. Also, I would have been happy to put my name on this. It's just appalling to see what's going on around our country right now, where we're persecuting people needlessly and without any sort of compassion. It's 100% appalling. So this is important. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone. And I hope we pass this.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, it will come back next time. It's not started for immediate approval this time, so.
Okay.
Thank you all. Next, item E, consideration of ordinance 7-23-768, amending section 335-8D, paren 3 of the Code of Ordinances to increase the number of amplification permits allowed in a calendar year, and this is put forth by the License Review Committee. And Doug, would you like to address this as well? It's kind of your night.
Yes. Let me just. So yeah, you may recall, I believe it was in early 2022 or late 21, I'm not sure, that we adopted the ordinance that imposed a limit of 45 permits a year. Before that, it had either been, I'm not sure if it was 90 before that or just unlimited.
I think it might have been unlimited.
In any event, so that was quite a change. Eastside Club, Tasting Room, Buck and Honey's, and Breakwater are the establishments that take out amplified sound permits. Buck and Honey's is at their max of 45, as is Breakwater. The other two are more in the 30s. But anyway, as you heard the gentleman from the Breakwater say, earlier, that it definitely has affected their revenue and their ability to provide employment to musicians. So essentially, they were looking for, at the committee, they wanted us to increase it back up to whatever they were doing before, so about 80. The committee thought that was too many. There was a reason why we had, adopted 45. So this is a middle ground. I think we probably overshot a little bit or went too far to lowering it to 45 when we did. I mean, I don't have data to support 45 or 60, but it does seem like they and probably Buck and Honey's, have the demand that they see in their business to do more shows, or more, not really shows, but more music.
I guess one question I would have is, I know back when you made the change, it was because that we were getting a lot of complaints about how loud the music was. And anybody from the PD, do you guys, has that been an issue ongoing, Chief? Or I'm sorry.
No. You're giving me an excuse to get up, man.
Yeah.
No, we haven't seen any. Well, particularly since this ordinance has been in place, we haven't seen the level of complaints that we were receiving from the community members. And as we've had many discussions about how sound travels and how every day is different, regardless of the weather, we haven't received the what I would consider any increase in number of complaints. There have been general complaints as of, how long is it going to be happening, et cetera, but nothing that has been deemed founded to be unreasonable.
We did, I should have said this, that before the License Review Committee considered this last week, we did send out notices to the residents within 200 feet, is it, Elaine? So I think that included some of the people on the other side of the river, and also I believe both of the new riverfront development project, as well as the neighbors of the East Side Club. We received one email in opposition to increasing the number, and no one came to the meeting. And that's what the chief said is consistent with what Officer Flora tells us when this comes up at the meetings, that it's really not been a problem. It could be if we go up to 60, maybe we'll see, maybe we'll see more complaints. I don't know.
Alder Moore?
Yeah, I guess to Alder Wood's point around kind of potentially the sort of randomness of the 45. Initially, I guess my concern would be that, first of all, let me just say that I'm very appreciative of the value of live music in terms of drawing people to any establishment. On the other hand, I'm also very appreciative of the level of activity at the riverfront generally, and I don't think we're given the establishments that were just listed. I don't think that we're talking about just raising the number to 60 for one establishment, and Buck and Honey's and Breakwater, for all intents and purposes, are in the same place. So if we're talking about raising it, it seems to me we're talking about 30 more events, because we can't say yes to Breakwater to 60 and no to Buck and Honey's. You have to stay at 45. If they're both maxing out at 45 right now, it's just hard for me to imagine an additional 30 events isn't going to have an impact in carrying across the water. I could be wrong about that, but it is concerning to me.
Thank you. Alder Bernstein.
I just had a question. I think you and I traded some emails, but my understanding that this allows for additional amplified events in the parks too, and that you mentioned there was like a 45 events planned for this year, so we may see additional events elsewhere besides just that places of business.
Right, but so the ordinance restricts it to 45 in the parks, to 45 city events in any one park.
In any one park, so it could be 15 more in each park.
Well, theoretically, yeah.
Right, but Winnequa being the major park for that kind of activity.
Yeah, right. So in total, between Grand Crossing, Winnequa, Schluter, and San Damiano, there's 45 events scheduled.
Oh, for all the parks.
For next year, I think is the plan.
Oh.
So, the parks, theoretically, if we pass the increase, right now they could be doing way more than they are, except, their staff is maxed out. So, I think I may have, in the initial response to you, had gotten that wrong.
Oh,
so,
gotcha. Should this be referred to parks?
No, I don't think so, because parks is the reason I say that is they're so far away from having to bumping up against the 45 event limit in any particular park that, whether it's just not really necessary for the Parks Board to look at it.
Alder Japula?
Just because I don't know, in our ordinance, do we have any language that stipulates decibel ratings based on distance from the event? Like, for instance, like Breakwater's having something, 200 yards from the site, does the decibel level have to be under a certain amount? Just curious. Is that in our ordinance at all?
I'll let the chief tackle that.
Yeah, it's my request when this ordinance was being created was that the language is in there about the decibel level. However, and I'm sure you know this quite well, Alder, from your experience as a restaurateur, but the how sound travels. I mean, a lawnmower on somebody's yard might be in violation of the decibel level, depending on the air content that day. And so it's challenging for us to, for example, measure out a distance from a property line and bring out a decibel meter when the next door neighbor's lawnmower is just as loud. I think what I asked the council for, and I think Attorney Cole was in support in allowing us to use the reasonable standard in determining what is allowed and what isn't. Is it so much so that it's shaking the windows of the house, inside the house of the complainant that asks us to come in and actually experience the noise volume? Is it so much that they can't even have a conversation on their front stoop because it's so loud, and they might have the volume at the same level on both days, but because of how sound travels, it will be received by one house differently depending on the time of day and the weather. Does that sort of make sense?
Thank you.
So yeah, the answer is yes, but we would like rather not to use our decibel meters out there. I don't think that that's a good measure for a reasonable standard.
Okay.
Alderwood?
Yeah, the ordinance does have, as the chief said, the decibel levels. I think it's 80 at 15 feet from the property line, but it also, there's a separate paragraph that allows grounds for denial, looking at basically the totality of the circumstances and whether it would be would unreasonably disturb the general public or persons in the vicinity. So the chief is actually the issuing authority.
Yes.
So he has discretion in that regard.
Alderman Quist.
The 80 decibels is actually for light vehicles. That's not for amplified music.
I'm sorry, you're right. Yep.
And as it relates to parks, I think the question had to do with individual parks, and it's an individual park address or a single park property or street location within a calendar year. So each park, in effect, currently could do 45 events.
Right.
Which makes perfect sense when it comes to a park shelter that might have amplified music. It's not the Parks Department doing it, it's someone else, but it limits the number. I was a little surprised. I wasn't here when the 45 days was made. Like I remember some of the conversation that was happening in the neighborhood across the river of comments of there wasn't a single night where you didn't have amplified music across the way and showing up on your doorstep. I'm also kind of balancing of the other parameters were some key parameters of the 9 to 9. And I would say the experience in the location down by these properties is very different now than it was 3 years ago. So even when there are nights of amplified music, I don't think the impact on the neighborhood is the same as it once was. And so I'm not sure if it's a change in management structure. I'm not sure if it's a change in how they're working with the bands or whoever else they're booking for these events, but they are not as significant. And I'm not sure if it's some of the competition of you have 3 or 4 different sites that are trying to amplify music, and I have not heard them trying to one-up each other. I've heard them kind of all try to keep theirs at a relatively decent level so they don't have to kind of turn their volume up to overshadow others. So I don't think we have the same concerns as we once had. I think 45 is too few. Maybe unlimited is too many, but I'm not sure.
Well, we can always come back again with a bigger number.
This would add about one night per week that they would be able to do music in that, obviously, as we know, so we have a limited number, about 5 months or so, that you can really do outdoor music comfortably.
And when we did pass this originally, there were weeks after weeks where it was every night of the week.
Yeah,
correct. Remember and any time from noon until, 8 or 9 or something. Yeah, so it was pretty.
If I may, Mayor, I think, and hopefully I presented this, one of the chief complaints was not necessarily the level of volume, it was the frequency from the neighbors, and not just across the river. It was, blocks away, and even officers would go surprised and actually hear the music from several blocks away. But again, the next day it'd be totally different, and you couldn't hear it. So, but the frequency is what the chief complaint was to the police department.
Anyone else? This will come back at our next meeting also. So,
Mayor?
Nancy?
Yeah, I would just say to the chief's point, since we passed this ordinance, the changes to the order and changed the numbers to 45, it's also the case that the current 2 has been completed. And so the density, i.e. the residential population in that area, not to mention the sound potentially not only going across the channel but also bouncing off the walls of the larger current 2, is I think is greater. So I think I'm not opposed to raising it, but I just think we need to be cautious. If the frequency is the issue, I think we need to be sensitive not only to those across the way, across the channel, but also to the increased number of residents that are at the riverfront that are going to be feeling that frequency as well.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I will move on to our next item, which is started for immediate approval. Consideration of Resolution 23-7-2634, establishing an ad hoc public safety building committee, which I have put forth. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So
motion to take it out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, as you all know, we put out an RFP for design for the public safety building almost a month ago now. Those responses are due this Friday. I want to, and have planned all along on establishing a building committee. Part of their duties will be to review those responses. So I wanted to get this established. I've been meeting with various people over the past couple of weeks about this. I wanted to get the committee established today so that we could, because of the way the RFP is set up, we've got some pretty tight timelines. So we'd like to get a meeting scheduled for the committee within the next week or 10 days, I guess, to talk about our criteria and everything for the committee to consider when reviewing these proposals. So that's what this is all about. And I've got a variety, I plan to, I'm hoping if this passes to appoint, there's a whole list of people at the end of the night, at the end of the agenda that I hope to appoint. Alderwood?
Do you know how big you had planned for the committee to be?
I think it's about 10.
Okay.
And it's a whole variety of people with different experience. There's staff members, obviously, who bring expertise in different areas as well. There's a council member. The city administrator and I, in part, I do want to be involved in this, but in part because he's so new, we will be chair and co-chair of it, so one or the other of us will be there. I think playing out, this probably will get involved in things like change orders and that type of thing, judging from my experience on the library building committee many years ago. So that was the thought behind this.
Okay, great.
Anybody?
I thought you had put out a list of people to be on the committee.
That's what's at the end of the agenda.
Yeah.
I missed it.
Okay.
I forgot about it.
Alder Moore.
You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. I appreciate your, obviously, you're putting together an ad hoc committee. I guess there's a couple of things that come to mind for me. One is, I guess I'd like to see the written charge of the committee, because I don't honestly quite understand what the written charge of the committee is, and how it interfaces with other committees that are already in existence in the city, including the facilities committee and others. And second, I'm a little concerned that out of the entire group of people that you're seeking to appoint, that inclusive of yourself, there's only 2 females out of the entire group. And I don't know. And a third would be, as Alder Holmquist has pointed out before, as it relates to other appointments, I guess I would say that I feel like having more information as to the expertise that each of these people are bringing to the table.
There are applications from the 3 people you don't know included in the packet. Well, including Ken Walls, who you do know, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will explain that a little bit more when we get to the appointment process.
Okay.
Obviously, I'd like to have more women, but our police chief and our police department representative, and the same with the fire department, are all men. We've got 2 city staff members outside of public safety who will be involved with the city hall portion of the project. One happens to be a woman, one happens to be a man. I mean, I'm kind of limited by what we have. This would still go through the facilities committee. That's always been an assumption. We can certainly, add that to this. But this is one of these things that I think, in a way, right now they're going to be looking at reviewing the proposals. I think going forward, it depends, first of all, if this referendum passes. And then, secondly, I think I don't think we're real certain exactly of how things are going to play out going forward, so we can certainly always revise the charge, make a more detailed charge to the committee later also. Several are, sure.
Just Alder, I think one thing certainly we would be anticipating is once the firm is selected, at least part of the evaluation process, certainly ask them that exact question in terms of how they would be incorporating different, cultural or based on sex for the facility itself, for design, how they would kind of incorporate that into their process. But I think there's also the opportunity then to actually elicit additional feedback from the consultant or the design engineer on what other avenues we can use to kind of solicit that specific design feedback. So I think that's a very fair question to be asking our design firms that we're looking at. So if we're not, even though we may be limited in how we directly do it, they were, I think, counting on the consultants to be able to come up with some additional alternatives on how to enhance that throughout their design process, I think is certainly more than fair, and I think would be an expected outcome of whatever proposals we'll be looking at.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. I guess all I would say is I'm a little bit concerned that there's only one alder on this committee, and again, I'm just concerned about how it interfaces with everything else. I mean, I understand that the city council will ultimately be approving things, but boy, this is the largest expenditure, bar none, that this city will ever make in our lifetime.
I will say I have been considering a second alder. Part of the issue is an alders with experience in this area, which I know you have, Nancy, but you will not be here when we're getting this up and running, and you won't be available via Zoom either. Is part of the issue. Plus, you are already on the San Damiano committee, so I'm trying to be, aware of your time commitments for those kind of things too. So I'm not averse to putting on another alder. I chose Alder Holmquist because he has been on plan. He is chair of facilities. He is chair of the Public Safety Committee, which he has chaired before, and he had a lot of plan committee experience, as you know. So I really want someone. I talked to Alder Rademacher about this. She didn't feel that she was really had any expertise in, especially about the area of energy conservation, that she had the expertise in the area that I was looking for in that. And she suggested that I talk to Ken Walls, and I reached out to him. And as you know, I know you think very highly of him. He has agreed to serve on the committee. So it isn't that I'm trying to avoid having women on the committee. It's more in terms of the experience of the women that we do have, and people's other commitments already. We have a couple different ad hoc committees going on. Alder Rademacher is on the DEI committee. You and Alder Wood are both on the San Damiano committee, and I want somebody with some experience in this area. So that's part of my reasoning. I'm not averse to having another alder on, but in terms of people with experience, actually, I don't want, I'm trying to get somebody with a little bit of experience in a lot of different areas related to this, is what I was looking for. Alder Nakula, did you have something to? It's not. Alder Bernstein.
Yeah. I just want to make a point. When we do these resolutions, I guess I have a philosophy that we're doing it not just for us on the city council. We're doing it to leave a very clear paper record for the public and others who want to see what the city is doing. And, there's a couple times where we use the passive voice, and it probably is understood by people on the council that this was agreed to, that was agreed to. But the people who are looking at the resolution and are going to be voting on this don't know when those agreements were made. So and then when I was talking about earlier, the Kathy Thomas resolution, we could just get it done and not deal with it, or we can do it in a way that really leaves something behind as a physical record for others to understand what we're doing. So when I sent the mayor, I sent her probably way too many comments.
That was not on this one.
Yeah,
that was
I know.
On the other.
I know.
On the other
I know.
one. Okay.
But I mean, it goes to that idea of who's the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get it done, or we can get it so that there's some kind of long-term advantage. So that's, so when I see the passive voice here, I kind of feel like there's a piece missing. So that's my only comment.
Okay. Anyone else? I think an ad hoc public safety committee, building committee is something that, I mean, typically you do something like this for any public building. It's not unusual.
I understand.
At all.
Yeah,
And
I get
we've discussed this at council meetings a lot. I realize not everybody listens to every single council meeting. I don't know if this would really, many people would be confused about this or not. But I'm certainly, if somebody wants to make a resolution to change the wording or add a whereas or something, that's fine. I would like to get this done because we don't meet for another 3 weeks.
Right.
And I would like to get these appointments made. We're already delayed. The longer we delay, the less likely that we're going to be able to get this on the ballot for next April. It's going to be November and the national election, which I frankly would just as soon not have all this thrown in with the national election next year. But that's
right. I appreciate
that's
that,
where,
and
coming from
I
here.
sense the urgency, and I will support this. But I just want you to know, when it comes to
Okay.
these resolutions, I'm coming at it from a different point of view.
No, and I understand that.
Mayor?
Brian?
I wholeheartedly support this, and I can support this piece even if we haven't got to the appointment part. And if you change the appointment, that's fine as well. I support it because I think you do need a group that is solely committed to looking at what we are doing regarding our public safety building process. And up until this point, I think there's been a lot of it that's been resting on the shoulders of a city administrator and a mayor to talk through all of the different elements that are happening on the back end. And I think that from this specific seat, I think sometimes it's not easy. And I think some of the questions that I've brought forward are felt as being taken individually by two people, because two people were carrying the lion's share of all of the other work that has to go on, where it really does need a committee that is having a more transparent conversation. I think, Rick, to your point, transparency. When you have an ad hoc committee that is having those discussions and can capture that information, that works. When you have a city administrator or a mayor trying to make a lot of those decisions, and sometimes they seem like minor decisions, but they don't get captured the same way, and by the time we come back and talk about them, we feel like we're missing the pieces. And so I think this is important. I think it's if the charge needs some clarity over time, I think it probably will at some time. With the initial clarity of being around the RFP, that this group said, hey, wait a minute, we want to do an RFP, because that came from this group, kind of putting the brakes on earlier, saying we want others being able to contribute and look at what else might be available. So I think this is the right time, and completely support it, even if you choose to change the appointment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Patrick, darkness has fallen, so I don't think you're putting up your hand, but, okay, well.
No, I'm here.
Okay. If there isn't anything else, then I'm going to call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. One more item. We really did not plan to have one of our longest meetings ever when you were here for your first night, Neil.
You guys already been getting close.
Oh, just wait for budget season.
That's right. Final item, consideration of resolution 23-7-2635, declaring intent to hold a referendum to exceed the state property tax levy limit, which I am putting forward. This is just the first read. I'm talking to Alder Wood. He suggested that we might want to put the council on record that we want to hold a referendum for operating, which I know we've all discussed, and so far as I know are in agreement with. And since we did approve going to referendum as part of the consideration of the feasibility study last September, actually, I can't remember when we actually voted on it, but that it would be a good idea to have a resolution declaring our intent to hold a referendum for the operating. So that's what this is what is behind this. So Alder Moore? And
Yeah,
basically, let me just step back, one other thing. That what this basically does is ask staff to start working on putting together information. We need to look at staffing needs. We already know what some of those are. We know there may be others. We need to look at salary needs. We know some people need market rate increases. We need to look at, and we also have just basic operating, being able to buy paper for the copy machine that has been at 0% budget for the last 3 years. So there's a lot of things that we need to consider, and this is just basically directing staff to start putting the information together. Now, Nancy, I'm sorry.
So I guess my question was, at this juncture, you have no idea of whether or not that referendum, or what the dollar amount of that referendum would be?
We do not.
Okay.
We've been waiting for a new administrator to come to help direct some of that. As you know, Mark and I have been trying to do all this ourselves for the last 15 months. And we also have been waiting to see what the Senate, what the state legislature was going to do in terms of this additional state funding, which we only found out about a couple of weeks ago was only, finalized. So there's been a lot of talk about different things. We also, that's part of the reason we went to, we hired the consultant to handle the compensation and classification study. That information will be included as part of this process as well in coming up with that number. So as far as right now, I don't even want to make a guess off the top of my head.
Okay.
We're not talking like $20 million or something. I would think maybe, I have no idea, between 500,000 and 2 million or something. I don't know.
Just briefly, I guess, Alder, certainly at this point, you could certainly attach a projected percentage increase over based on what we're going to be looking at for this year's budget. That's certainly an exercise we can do. I think in terms of, and in the spirit of transparency, actually having those expenditures I clearly identified that are new and going to be is really the way to proceed on this.
Yeah.
So I think those will begin to become more clear as we go through the budget process for this year. Certainly, we'll see where staff requests come in on those. I think those will give us very real, tangible. These positions, these increases, these expenditures are kind of the above and beyond what we would anticipate seeing the need to do that. So I think the benefit will come not only for council but for the general public. To actually, once we go through that, and I think it's probably assume that would be either as part of the existing budget process. We'll talk for Mark since he's not here to defend himself. But in terms of once we do the exercise for this year's budget, we can very easily identify what we think those are going to be for next year.
Yeah. And this is certainly not setting a question or anything. That's something that council would have to do in terms of an amount and whatever else is involved in that in the future. This is just directing staff to start putting together the information. And so Neil and I can work with them on what you need to know to make a decision about the question. Alderwood? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a follow-up?
Just to clarify, this referendum would be also on the spring ballot. So this operating referendum as well as a public safety referendum.
Yes, because we do not want to have to go through hiring a communications firm for 2 separate referendums and 2 separate election dates. And in part, this we may. It is not unusual at all to have an operating referendum tied into a building referendum because will probably be increased costs, operational costs with the new building, even though we fully intend to make it as energy, efficient as possible, but it's a bigger area, there's more cleaning involved, all kinds of other things involved with expense. So it's not at all, that very well may be involved in determining the amount of the operating referendum. But yes, we do plan to have them both together. Alder Wood and then Alder Bernstein.
Yeah, the reason I brought this up as I think something that we need to do, I recognize the mayor could actually direct staff to do all this stuff without our saying anything. But I think at the end of the day, the council will be the one that has to approve whether we, the actual question and whether we actually put it on the ballot or not. So this is basically us saying, we don't know how big the problem is, but we know we are up against the state levy limits, and we're going to need to exceed them. So staff, go figure out, you tell us what you think you need, then we'll make that final decision on what the number is. But this is basically us saying, taking ownership of it, really, I guess, in a way, and saying, yes, as a city council, this is something we want staff to do.
Rick?
Yeah. In one of the whereases, you talk about how we're coming up against levy limits and we're not able to fairly compensate our staff, but you also mentioned expanding staff?
Mm-hmm. This will include some increased staff.
Okay. I've heard about a police officer we've talked about expanding the force and at least one person. I haven't heard about other increases in positions, but I do remember when we talked about the classification and compensation study and we hired a consultant, one of the options was to do a staff analysis. And I thought if some kind of study like that would help us document the need for additional staff, and I still think it might be a good option to add that to the current contract.
I think that's something we could potentially do. I'm not sure how helpful that would be. I know, for instance, a few years ago we had a staffing study of the police department. They recommended hiring 12 additional officers. Well, sorry, guys. Well, we did hire one. It's just not,
So you think
not necessarily. I think our
beyond
departments,
realistic?
I think, that one certainly was. I think that our departments have a good idea of what they need. I suppose we could
But
add
here you
that to
have
the
a
study.
third party who, hopefully is an honest broker and can help support your argument when it comes time to
Well,
win
I do
votes.
think, it isn't just the departments saying it. I think obviously the alders who are on those committees who are well aware of the needs of, of those departments and that kind. It isn't that other people don't already have information about what we need. I think we need additional park workers, at least one, maybe two. We need to probably at least one additional firefighter to serve as a kind of a floater. There's several that we're aware of. We haven't listed them because we haven't sat down and met with people to discuss it. I don't know, Neil, do you have anything?
I think just to tie it back to some things we discussed actually during my interview process was kind of reinforcing the council's strategic plan and make sure we're very clear on what council's priorities are going to be going into not only this budget, but hopefully for future budgets as well. I think kind of doing that comparison and having that analysis will help that process in terms of evaluating staff needs as well. Because my impression has been, certainly obviously subject to future conversations, is certainly maintaining the status quo in terms of a service level, I think is a minimum standard from my feeling from council. I think the desire is always to see if there's ways we can enhance and improve efficiencies and effectiveness. Sometimes that might mean staff. But in terms of making sure we're making those investments into areas where council has clearly said, these are our important areas of programming that we want to focus on.
Okay.
And so I think that exercise, we can certainly start and do internally a little bit. Maybe if we need a referee outside to help us a little bit, we've got some resources I know locally and in the area that can help with that. But I think that will go a long way to helping that conversation and that analysis.
I just thought it might be part of a strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to make it as data-based and information-based as we can for those positions. So if we're doing X number of zoning permits with the staff we have, and again, we should be able to identify what's that next tipping point. If we increase 20% on that, we're going to need another person to help review those.
Yeah.
Trying to help kind of set some of those future standards as far as maybe even like a 5-year staffing plan, not just looking at
Yeah.
where we think we're going to be then, and kind of trying to
Well-
figure out how to stagger those and plan for those most accordingly.
Yeah, and the impacts can be on space in terms of a new city hall.
Absolutely.
Right. And of course, part of the feasibility process and part of this, if we do end up hiring a different architect or whatever, that involved talking to staff about their staffing needs for like the next 20 years, and that's what the original feasibility plan was, or square footage anyway, was designed to address some of that too.
Yeah,
So,
I do remember that.
but we also have to keep in mind that we only have a certain amount of money.
Exactly.
So,
And we're trying to address that.
and we're trying to address it, but we have to be reasonable because we're also asking people for a lot of money for buildings. So we have to, kind of take both into consideration, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this? This will come back at the next meeting, so. Okay. Given that, we will move on to reports. Is there any updates or discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? I guess I have one. I did attend the DEI committee, DEIB committee meeting last week. They've narrowed down 3 of the recommendations that were made by the original committee a year ago and have been discussing meeting with staff and working on some different recommendations. They've got little subgroups working with each of the 3. And I think they're hoping to have some kind of recommendations within the next couple of months. So it was an interesting discussion, hearing the different questions they had, and I think they're still doing some exploration of that. If there's nothing else on
I
that,
have one
Rick?
quick-
Okay.
Yeah, being on the library board, I'm one of 3 people that are part of this Embracing Equity program, and we're going to have a 3-day retreat this week. So I'll have more to report, I'm sure, next.
Is that just for staff, or?
It's for me and 2 staff.
Oh.
So it's Ryan and Tiffany
Mhm.
Elderson. So the 3 of us are the people that have been enrolled in this program. It's kind of nationwide, so there are other people in other areas who will also be part of this retreat on Zoom. It's mostly for public educators. I think we're pushing the line as a library for the content to really apply to us 100%. But we're reading some pretty heavy stuff. So it's like being back in school. It's some real academic stuff. But it's very, it's enlightening, I'll say that for sure. And it's intense. So I feel I have a lot more to learn, but this is just scratching the surface. But like I said, I'll have more to report hopefully next time.
Yeah, good to know. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Or I guess, does anyone have anything on sustainability? I think we're,
Oh, I guess I can just say, we're going to meet with Ryan, Teresa, and I, as we're following along with the department heads. So that's scheduled for later this month.
about the sustainability plan?
Yes.
Okay. Then we will get to committee reports. Alder Holmquist?
Sure. On the 20th, so that's still this week, Thursday. We have ZBA. There is one applicant for that meeting on the 20th. On the 26th, so next Wednesday, is public safety and reviewing some initial budget aspects, and then probably one kind of key item is a look and reconsideration regarding our median and right-of-way safety concern that was passed at that committee roughly a year ago, and it ended up failing at the city council level. But we want to bring it back to that committee for some additional information and feedback and discussion. And we'll likely be coming back to this group after that meeting is our guess. So more to come on that. And then on the 25th is CDA, I think, but Doug will tell us more if that's happening or not.
Yeah, I don't think that is happening in July. CDA, that is. I think
That's it?
The chair will be riding his bike across Iowa this night.
All right.
So,
Oh, wow, cool.
Alder Moore.
Yeah, the Plan Commission had a decidedly quiet, short meeting, this last meeting, with very little on the agenda, after, as folks know, pretty hefty agendas in the last 6 to 8 months, if not longer. The meeting for July 24th is canceled, for those people that are interested in the Plan Commission. And then on the transit front, I would just say that we had another good meeting with the Transit Commission, several good meetings with the Transit Commission, and this last commission meeting spent the majority of the meeting talking about the criteria that we'll use, the final criteria that we'll use to weigh the various proposals in front of us. And I want to thank the Transit Commission again for their continued work. It's been a long road, and I really appreciate everybody's commitment to stick to it and make sure we make the best possible recommendation for the city of Monona to the City Council of Monona. So we will continue that work at least for a couple more months before a recommendation is out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alder DePula. Is he still there? I think maybe we lost Patrick.
I
think you did.
Okay. Alder Wood.
Let's see, license review met last week, and we talked about pretty much the entire agenda tonight. Parks Board also met on Wednesday, and the main thing was we took sort of the first look at the capital budget. Let's see, MPO was canceled. CDA is going to be canceled this month, and San Damiano meets tomorrow.
Alder Bernstein.
Well, you heard about public safety and transit. I don't have to repeat anything there. Library board didn't meet this month. So the only thing I can add with sustainability is we did have a meeting with Ryan and Thor, and a volunteer, Ken Cruiser, I think his name is, who's very interested in working with the library to plant a native plant garden. So I think we worked it through Public Works as well, since the land doesn't belong to the library, it belongs to the city. So we're just going to kind of carve out a 25-foot square area, and then they'll apply to the county for some free native plants. But I have to admit that there's a very impressive group of volunteers that Teresa has put together. They've even got a name, I forget what it is, but it's over 24 people, and they've started doing garden tours of some other homes that are planted in native gardens. And so I'm expecting a lot from this group. They've got a lot of energy, and so this is probably just scratching the surface of what we'll see from them. But Teresa has done a really good job energizing people who applied for a sustainability committee, didn't get appointed, but still there's a lot of desire and energy there, so she's harnessing that. So I think you'll see something there by the end of the summer.
This is going to be on the library property you're talking about?
Which is not library property.
No, I know that.
But it's going to be, it'll be close to
different.
it'll be close to the intersection at the top of the hill where the sign is.
Okay. I'm just wondering, because we have had a group of volunteers for years taking care of all the gardens at the library, who are continuing to do it this year. So I just want to make sure they've been included.
No, that was to consider, that was talked about. I think the idea is that this new group would plant it, but the existing group would be willing to take that on. If not, they'll be willing to step in, but they are trying to cooperate with each
Okay,
other.
good. I just wanted to make sure they knew
Yeah.
about it.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. Well, now we will get to the chief. And I don't know if
Wake up.
Officer Hoffman has anything to report, or?
I'm just going to step out for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we haven't met since the 4th, so I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for a wonderful 4th, a very safe 4th festival, community festival, and I'm told record-setting, but don't quote me on that. But
And
certainly,
very diverse. Also, I've had several comments from people about that.
yeah, I did it. We heard that as well. But just anecdotally from our officers who worked it for years and years and years, including our most senior officer, this is probably the busiest community festival he had seen. So, and so thanks to staff, and I know several of you worked the event and volunteered. It was a good event. And then Officer Hoffman surprised me today by coming in, as he told me he would from time to time, just to sit in on council meetings, not only as a union president, but obviously as an employee here, but that I want to embarrass him and recognize him at the same time, because he survived a very scary moment a couple weeks ago involving a car collision while he was pursuing and successfully apprehending and staying in the fight and staying upright. So scary moment, not only as he will tell you for him, but obviously his family was very scared as well. So were his bosses as well. But that's, as I said before, it's a type of cops you all have here, and the firefighters and public safety folks that you have here. And so every time I get an opportunity to brag, I will. And so here I am. So. And then I'm here just for questions that normally. Oh, I do want to comment on Audra Wood's wonderful shirt too. Not only is it a great representation of some of the comments made here today and the movement, but pink looks good on you. And I'm not trying to get anything out of you. I just wanted to say that. Yeah. And that's it, Mayor. Just open for questions.
Anybody have any questions for the chief? I was very happy to see Officer Hoffman walking in the door. Yeah. After that experience, it's. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief McMullen. I think, are you still up there? There he is. Did you have anything to report?
I don't think we can hear the chief for some reason.
If you're talking, we can't hear you. Is your?
Oh, well.
Not sure what's going on there. It looks like he doesn't look like he's muted.
Yeah, you should be able to hear him. Everybody can hear everybody else. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the problem is, Jerry, but I guess you'll have to save it for next time.
Put it in writing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Don't take it personally.
No worries, I don't.
Oh,
breakthrough. We almost got off the hook.
Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to report?
Just real quick, I'm going to echo the chief's comments about the festival. The festival went really well. It was the first large-scale stand-up of our rescue task force between that and the Memorial Day Parade. I actually tracked our citizen interactions that came up and talked to us and asked what we were doing, and I'm happy to report we had 100% positive citizen interactions with the equipment, and love having our cops out there. I think they did a fabulous job. Overall, I think the festival was great. Last thing I want to say is we are moving forward on the brush truck. You may have seen some pictures posted on Friday. Just got striped, and I'm happy to report we're actually going to be at budget on that. Even without the DNR grant, we're gonna make it work. So that should be in service by September 1st.
Great. Good to hear. Thank you. Aline, did you have anything to report? No. And City Administrator, did you have anything to report?
Day one was a success. We had
you don't know that fully yet.
The computer. I still got a few minutes probably.
Yeah.
No, today was a lot of logistics, getting things up and operational on my phone, my computer. Meeting with staff for our first round. Did a really great exercise on emotional quotient this morning. That was actually kind of neat. So got more of an insight to my staff than I would have even anticipated, but it was really worthwhile. Getting some now the calendar's up and running, getting those populated with meetings and going to hit the ground running pretty fast here. So, but we're so certainly special thanks to both Leah and Mark for all their work in getting things, and the mayor for that matter for getting things kind of lined up. The dominoes, first ones lined up so we can hit the ground running really right away today. So it was a productive day. So, but it's going to be a busy next couple months.
Yeah.
So.
And a long day. Yeah. For you, that's for sure. Well, great. I only had one thing to report. Mark, at least I think he gave operating budget instructions at the meeting this morning.
I believe he's coming next week. I believe he said he would have them ready.
He'd be sending them. Okay. So he and I have talked about a schedule because, as you know, council will meet, have special committee of the whole meetings, both for the operating and the capital budgets coming up in September and October, and we have selected some dates for those, and he'll be sending out a calendar of those so you can get them on your calendars soon. So then we're down to appointments. Other than the Public Safety Building Committee, we've got 3. Angie Fossil has been appointed to the Library Board. She's the school district. They have one nominee to the Library Board. Dan Olson has chosen to appoint her. Police and Fire Commission voted to appoint Joe Fontaine again to the Public Safety Committee. That's part of their organizational meeting every year. One of their members is they vote on one of their members to be a member of the Public Safety Committee as well. And then John Chapman, and his, I think his application should be, or it was sent out separately, I think. An architect who is currently on the Landmarks Commission, which we're hoping he stays on for a while as well. But he's been appointed to the Plan Commission, and I know Doug is really been hoping that we can get someone with more architectural experience on plans. So I think, and Nancy has met with them. And so there are those 3. Then in terms of the ad hoc Public Safety Building Committee, the city administrator, myself, Alder Holmquist, all the staff, Dan Stefani, Chief Cheney, Dan Eckloff, who in terms of the police and fire departments, they're each going to have 2 members, but one is going to be like the voting member and the other will be an alternate, just to make sure they have somebody there for the discussions, because as you know, they get called out quite a bit. Dan Eckloff will be the voting member for the fire department, and I don't know if all of you know, but he's also a member of our facilities committee. He, in a past life, was a building inspector, has been part of the fire department for years, so brings a lot of experience to that role. And then Chief Cheney will be the voting member for the police department, but Ryan Losby will be the alternate for that, and Jerry McMullen will be the alternate member for the fire department. In terms of the 3 citizen members, I think most of you know Jim Bussey, who was an alder for, 10 or 15 years. He was on every single committee. He just retired from Gorman Company within the past year or so, where he was more on the business end of it, but he's very aware, knows a lot about building projects. He served on CDA, he chaired Plan, Public Safety. He was in all those committees as a member, and he's very conservative with the dollar. So I asked him if he would be willing to serve, and he is. So I'm really happy about that. He suggested Kirk Braley, who also recently retired from Gorman, who is a local resident, was a construction manager for them. So we do want to hire a construction manager, owner's representative. In fact, that's one of the things on Neil's plate, getting out an RFP for that. But Kirk has experience in that type of role as well. So he was happy to join. And then Ken Walls, Nancy could probably speak more to him than I can, but he has a great reputation in the renewable energy field. He was on the committee, the sustainability committee for the school district when they were involved with putting the solar panels there, and he knows a lot about all the grant money available, and there's a lot of federal money available right now through this infrastructure project that we want to be sure that we're tapping into those, and I think Ken will bring a lot of expertise in that area. So those are the members. So Nancy, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just have a question. This again goes back to scope a little bit. I know, certainly that Jim Bussey has some financial chops, or substantial financial chops, but I guess I'm wondering if there's any value of having somebody on this committee, on this ad hoc group, that's not unlike the Gary Becker, if you will, of the CDA, which is to say, you know, honestly, if you were to come forward with a plan and say, you know, this is going to cost you $50 million or this is going to cost you $40 million, I don't think anybody on the council would have the wherewithal, frankly. I mean, it's just, again, it's an entirely different scope than what we've dealt with previously, and I guess I'm just wondering, is there any value in this ad hoc group, or if not the ad hoc group, is it somebody else that knows enough about what we're about to consider constructing to really have a magnifying glass on it and know how to compare it to other facilities?
I think that's in part the role of the owner's representative, construction manager, isn't it, Neil?
Oh, absolutely, in terms of, you know, getting them involved, and certainly in the design element would allow that resource to be, you would hope that someone would have that expertise to be able to compare. Certainly, obviously, facilities, you know, designed for current staff, projected staff, as well as a long-term, the life of this building is going to be 50, 75, 100 years, or whatever the design window is going to be, you know, having enough foresight and enough flexibility to understand, certainly like the changing nature of police departments right now is making that an interesting challenge in terms of designing what, you know, a police department now is not going to be a police department even 5-10 years from now. So having someone who has that expertise to be able to understand what those trends are going to be, and then certainly understand that, you know, don't keep investing in these older technologies because you're not going to need them in 5 years. Absolutely. So having someone who can, in addition, certainly having the chief and our own staff and what they're seeing, but having someone who's actually been able to compare those types of projects, probably throughout the country, maybe even internationally, and what sort of expertise we'd be looking for.
I will say, when I was president of the library board and I was on all the committees when we were doing the addition there, Alder Paul Ament, and I can't remember if he was actually an Alder then or not, but he worked for one of the big architectural firms as a project manager, and he sort of served that role on a voluntary basis. And he saved the library a lot of money over time. We had these plans, and then Paul would come in and go, you know, they ought to think about this or whatever, and that is the role I think that we would envision this owner's representative playing. Which is why Neil is planning on, I told him that's the first thing on his list of things to do, is to get the RFP out for that, and that person would be involved in the design process. And that's my understanding from talking to people at the school district and that kind of thing. And McFarland actually had someone as well. That would be where that would come in. I'm not sure if you're looking for something more or something in addition to that, Nancy, or if that would... No,
that's fine. I just didn't see anybody on the committee, like I said, that was necessarily, you know, that person, and so I just didn't know, again, whether that was something you were looking for on the committee or whether it was somebody we would be hiring, or both.
Yep.
You know, and it sounds like having that expertise, frankly, on both, from what you just said about your previous experience in the library, might not be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Right. Okay. Any other, I guess, is there a motion to approve the appointments?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 We are adjourned, and Nancy, I know you're an hour later, right? So.